How do you describe the scariest thing that's ever happened to you, especially if it's something that should be so mundane? I need advice. Or a priest. I don't know. I recently moved into a house on the outskirts of my home city. I've been here for a few months. It's not exactly a suburb. People have built their own houses, and each is spaced apart differently. People around here say we're out in the country, but we aren't really. Our neighbors aren't miles apart. For some people your neighbor is right next door, and for others it would be a bit of a walk, or there's some woods between you and them. There's a patch of woods behind the house I live in now. If I walked through it long enough, I'd walk into someone's yard after 20 minutes or so. I am telling you all of this because I want you to understand the area. There's a mix of trees, some with leaves, others with pine needles. There's probably little ponds out there in those woods, but I wouldn't know. I don't go back there if I can help it. There are snakes among other things. My backyard is approximately half a football field's length. It ends in that wall of woods I was talking about. And in the center of my backyard is a big tree. I don't know what kind of tree it is exactly. I've just never thought to research it. The bark is like scale armor or something. It's in big chunks. I used to have a tree like it in my yard as a kid. You could pull the bark right off in big chunks if you wanted to, and we did sometimes. It has needles of some kind. It's covered in vines. It's obviously an old tree. The person I rented from said that it was their mother's house, and the tree had at least been there since their mother was a teenager. When her family first bought the house, you get used to things like this. Doing yard work, walking around the yard. I don't know the kind of tree like I said, but I know my tree. Then one day, it was just different. I didn't notice it at first. Things like that kind of blend into the background as you go about your day to day. I got in my car and went to work. I came home later that day and got out, and that's when I noticed it, a completely different tree in the exact same spot. I blinked a few times. I stared at it. I imagine I had an incredibly stupid expression on my face, because in that moment I was dumbfounded. I walked into my backyard, looked up at the tree. It was different. My tree was tall, 60 feet at least. This tree was noticeably smaller. The bark was different too. It was smooth. Almost flat besides the occasional nodule here or there. These are the first things that jumped out to me because I was so shocked. How can there just be a different tree in my backyard? Was this some kind of prank? The ground didn't look disturbed, no padded dirt. There were no needles on the ground as if the previous tree had been knocked down or uprooted. I backed away from it and turned to get a look at it from a distance. This is when I noticed how uniform it was. The leaves were a bright green color, taking on the light of the evening sun. The trunk was a rich shade of brown. I was even more baffled by this. Later I realized that, at a distance, the tree looked like it was plucked straight from the background of a cartoon or a children's coloring book. This bothered me a lot. The whole thing. I don't know if it was a normal amount of bother or not. I have OCD, so certain things just get under my skin. I was hungry, so I finally went inside and started dinner, but I couldn't help myself. I kept peeking out the back window at the tree. Kept giving side glances towards the window when I wasn't near it. I felt like it was looking back at me. Made the hair on my neck stand up. This just isn't normal. A tree just doesn't appear. It doesn't just replace another tree you had in your backyard. This isn't The Sims, this is real life. After dinner I called my landlady. She picked up after the third call. Garrett? Is there some kind of emergency? I see I missed 2 calls from you already. What's going on? I stood there in the kitchen, staring out the back window at the tree. Hey Mrs. Langford. No, everything is okay, I think. I have a really weird thing I need to ask you about. It's honestly gotten me a bit shaken up. She sounded a bit confused as she responded, maybe even a little amused. "What is it, Garrett? You sound scared or something. Did you find a skeleton in the house?" She laughed nervously after saying this. I opened my mouth to speak, but for a moment nothing came out. We were both quiet. "You didn't actually find a skeleton on my property, did you?" she said in that same nervous tone with less humor than before. "No. Not a skeleton. It's a tree." Again, both of us were quiet. "A tree?" she finally spoke back. I sighed. "I don't know how to explain this exactly. But you know the tree in the backyard?" I said, staring right at the new tree as I spoke. The sun was back behind the woods now, casting shadows across the yard. The shadow of the new tree felt thicker than the others somehow. I think it must have been my imagination. Maybe I was just shaken up by this intruder tree. "I do know that tree, yes," she said, beginning to sound impatient. "It's different. I mean, it's a different tree now. Like someone replaced it or something." "Do you know anything about this?" I said, finally walking away from the window. Tired of looking at the thing, there was another pause. "Is this a joke?" she said, a mix of humor and annoyance in her voice. "No, it's not a joke. I know it's really bizarre, but the tree in the backyard is different. The other one had pine needles, this one has leaves." She cut me off. "No, I remember how the tree was. I lived in that house for a long time," she said. She was short with me, but didn't sound impatient. "Look, send me a picture of the tree. I've got to make sure you're not going crazy." I opened my mouth to say something but then closed it. I nodded to myself. "Okay. I will. I'll call you back after I send the picture." "All right. Talk to you in a bit." I hit the hang-up button and looked up at the wall. After a few moments of just standing there, I went to the back door. I put my hand on the frame and looked out the unblind window set into it. There was the tree, sitting dead center in my backyard. Behind it were those woods, and behind that was the setting sun. The sky was a beautiful pinkish-orange color. I only thought about the sky for a moment before I got that weird feeling again, as if I was being watched. I looked back at the tree. It's ridiculous to say that it stood there menacingly, but that's what it felt like. I shook my head, feeling ridiculous but simultaneously completely justified in my fear. If this was someone's idea of a prank, it was psychotically thorough. I opened the door and stepped into my backyard, letting the door shut with a click behind me. Phone in hand, I walked further into the yard, keeping my distance from the tree. Shadows were heavy on the ground. I couldn't avoid the tree's shadow, but again felt ridiculous that the thought even occurred to me. Stop being crazy, I told myself, but swore that as the thing's shadow fell on me it got colder than before. This is just freaking me out. Fuck, I got behind the tree, looking at it with my house standing behind it. I let out another sigh. The thing was so uniform. I looked back down at the camera, hit the capture button a couple of times. Made sure the house was in the background, and then to be extra sure, I took a selfie. I positioned myself so both the tree and the house were all in view, took 2 more photos and then closed my phone screen. I would have sent them right there, but again, that feeling of being watched. I looked around the yard this time, looked to see if anyone was actually watching me. My neighbor to the right was nowhere to be found, same can be said of my neighbor to the left. It was just me and this thing in my yard. I started walking towards the back door when a breeze began to blow through the yard. I would have ignored it. But a sound stopped me in my tracks. A creaking. Closer to a ticking sound. I looked back at the tree again. The wind was blowing through its branches. Even in this state it looked so uniform. As if the whole thing was leaning slightly to the right. And it was creaking. It moved so fluidly in that breeze. It almost looked like a dancer or a cheerleader, pom-poms up in the air. I got another sudden chill. The hair on my body stood on end again. I swore I'd seen some kind of face amongst the leaves. A dead-eyed face. I turned and sprinted back to the door, opening and closing it behind me. I closed the mini blind set over the door window and pulled them shut. I sent the pictures to Mrs. Langford immediately, closing my phone right after. I spent the next couple of hours sitting at my computer, playing video games with some friends and anxiously checking my phone every 5 minutes. One of my friends noticed my anxiety. "What's wrong with you, Garrett?" he asked. I paused for a moment, stopping my movement in game as I thought about how to answer. A tree in my backyard disappeared and got replaced by another tree. I said simply. They all laughed. I knew they would. It was joked about for the rest of the night. Around 10 p.m. I'd turned off my monitor, and was getting ready for bed when I got a text back from Mrs. Langford. "You are right. That isn't the same tree." "Are you messing with me, Garrett?" I stared at the screen a bit dumbfounded. Wasn't I the one that called her about it? I texted her back, "No, I'm not. I'm just as confused about it." "So you didn't?" It replaced the tree. She didn't text me back for a while. By then I was already in bed. "I am busy tomorrow. We'll come by in a few days." "Don't mess with it." I stared at my phone screen, head against my pillow for a few minutes. "Don't mess with it?" My mind jumped to irrational places pretty quickly. Did she think this tree was dangerous or something? Or was it more like a legal thing? That calmed me down a little. Maybe one of the neighbors had a problem with the tree and replaced it with this one. That would definitely be a legal matter. Maybe they just hoped no one would care enough about the tree to make a fuss, but no. That was stupid. A stupid thought. It didn't make any more sense than any of the rest of this. I felt a little sick right then, laying in bed with my eyes glued to the popcorn ceiling. My phone sat screen off in my hand next to me. I could feel my heart pump in my chest. Anxiety, I knew it was. If someone replaced that stupid fucking tree, there would be some kind of sign. Dirt on the ground. Tracks for equipment. And why would they? We're so far apart. That pine tree couldn't have bothered them. It wasn't an ugly tree or anything. It just doesn't make sense, but that's not all. I felt a lump in my throat. That new tree. So perfect. And the feeling I got. I squeezed my phone in my hand. Maybe it's just my anxiety, I told myself. When I was younger, I used to have health-related OCD symptoms. I'd check my pulse all the time. Get scared I was having heart attacks. Feel physical pain. My OCD is and was pretty bad. I've become obsessed with lots of things, but mainly bad thoughts about myself. What if I'm actually a murderer? What if all of my family secretly hate me? What if I have cancer? And more ridiculously horrendous stuff that would drive me crazy for months. This though, a fucking tree. I'd felt crazy before, but this must have been it. If this drove me nuts, I've really gone off the deep end. I had trouble getting to sleep that night. The dreams didn't help. When I wasn't tossing and turning, a general sense of anxiety weighing down on me, I dreamed of that tree. I was sitting in the kitchen, the lights were out. But the moon was bright against the blinds on the back door window. And then the shadow from the tree would somehow fall over it. I don't know how I knew it was the tree, but I did know. I don't know if it moved, or if it was some kind of evil magic or something. But the shadow of the tree blocked out the light. I could hear it creaking even in the house. The wind blowing, beep. 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 My alarm woke me up for work. I woke up tired. I got dressed. Thankfully, I was too focused on the stress of getting ready for work to think about the tree. That didn't last for long though. After having a quick breakfast, and managing to keep myself from peeking out the kitchen or back door window, I went out to my car, and decided to look back towards the thing. I noticed something sitting on the ground next to it. I couldn't tell what it was from a distance, but it looked like a mound of dirt from the driveway beside my house. I looked down into my open car door, let out a nervous sigh, and closed it, deciding to go see what this was all about. I ignored the feeling of being watched and walked over, and about halfway there I froze in my tracks. It wasn't a mound of dirt at all. All I could see from my car was brown. Maybe I hadn't been looking hard enough, because it was obvious now. It was a dead deer. It was on its side, just a foot or two away from the tree diagonally, facing towards my house. I stared down at it, the shock setting in as I took in the details. Its mouth was open, its tongue set against the bottom of its mouth. Its eyes were open too, looking up towards the sky or the leaves of the tree, I don't know which, but besides that, it looked fine. There weren't any wounds, the body didn't look bent or broken. It looked as if it had just come up to the tree, laid down and died just like that. I stared down at it, then back up at the tree and took a sharp step back. I didn't see anything. I just wanted to be away from it. I felt the sudden urge to scream at it. To scream, "Did you do this?" I wanted to scream at a damned tree. I thought a tree killed a deer in my yard. My heart was racing. I felt crazy. I've got to go to work. I can't deal with this right now. Sanity. Or avoidance. Either way, I needed to go. I was going to be late. I went back to my car and reopened the door, feeling as if there were eyes on my back the entire time. And as I pulled down my driveway, I stared at the tree until it was out of sight. The workday was long. It was long because I was anxious. And being anxious only made it longer. I'd spent the first half of the day half working and half staring off into space. Occasionally punching numbers into a spreadsheet, and then Googling things like about evil trees in folklore, and not finding much. I thought about the deer's face. Most deer look the same, but they're generally cute. They came into my yard, often at night, and when insomnia induced by my anxiety was bad, I'd sometimes go sit outside and watch for them. Thinking that the tree killed one of the deer from my woods made me angry. It also made me feel insane. This whole thing was making me feel insane. At one point I began doodling what I thought I'd seen the night before. The face amongst the leaves of the tree. I'm no real artist, but I did draw a lot when I was younger, and brush up against it every now and again at my current age. What I drew was a face between the leaves. Blank eye shapes and a grin forming out of the sky behind the rustling leaves. That's what I thought I'd seen. My boss had been looking over my shoulder without me noticing. I jumped a little when I noticed, thinking of quitting to take up art, Garrett. He asked, in a tone that was, thankfully, light-hearted, no, just doodling something from a dream. I said, the little kind of lie that would never really matter. He took a closer look at it. Spooky stuff, he said, leaning back. Do you like trees? I laughed at this question. I didn't used to care much about them till yesterday. He furrowed his brow, sticking his hands into his pockets. What, did one fall on your house or something? I thought about telling him for a moment. How do you tell your boss something like this? That there's a tree that seemingly replaced the previous tree in your yard. That you feel like it's watching you, and are irrationally freaked out about it. That this morning there was a dead deer sitting within 5 feet of the thing, that you felt threatened. That it felt like a threat, no, just garden trouble. I finally said. He laughed, well, if you need any help, give me a call. I've got quite the green thumb. He said, then pulled his right hand out of his pocket and began to flex his thumb. Thankfully, we left it at that. I didn't put a music or podcast on during the drive home, so it was far quieter than usual. I focused on the road, hands gripping the wheel tight. I could hear that rush in my ears again. My own blood pumping through my head. I wondered what I'd see when I pulled into my driveway. I popped a quick glance at the pack of cigarettes in the passenger seat. I hadn't smoked in over a year at this point. But this felt like a good time to start again. Or maybe it was a terrible time really. I just knew I wanted one, badly. I finally came within view of my house. I saw the house first, as other houses and outcroppings of woods blocked behind it. As I drew in closer though, I saw the tree. Even from this distance, something seemed off. The trees around it seemed dull in comparison. If it were a painting, it would have seemed as if the artist had painted that tree brighter for emphasis, so it stuck out when compared to the others. I tried to spy the deer's corpse, but the tree was too far. Blocked by my house. I was driving slow, I realized, practically idling down the street. I sighed heavily, looked back ahead and drove forward, turning into my driveway. As I pulled up it, finally settling where the pavement ended at the side of my house, I stopped and stared, simply letting my foot rest on the brake. I blinked a few times at the scene before me, but that was it. Wasn't it? It wasn't a scene. The deer was gone. I felt hot tears well up at the corners of my eyes. A shaky breath came out between gritted teeth. Was I going insane? Had I imagined the deer corpse this morning? My hands began to hurt. I looked down to see that I was gripping the steering wheel so hard they'd both turned bright red. I eased up. I was breathing hard too. I was shaking. I closed my eyes. The car was still running. I could leave. I could put the car in reverse and leave, but should I? I closed my eyes. I took a deep, slow breath. And another one. And another one. I sat there, just breathing for a few moments. Finally, eyes still closed, I reached down and put the car in park. I eased my foot off the brake. I reached up, taking my keys out of the ignition. The engine stopped. I got that feeling again. My neck felt cold. I swear I could feel the hair there curl. I opened my eyes suddenly. The tree was still in that same spot. Did I think it was going to get closer? Maybe I felt that. Finally, I reached over, grabbing the pack of cheap cigarettes and the Bic lighter I'd bought at a gas station on my lunch break. I climbed out of the car and shut the door, keeping my eyes on the tree. I fumbled with the pack of cigarettes for a moment, ripping away at the plastic that sealed the pack with clumsy fingers. Pinching a cigarette by the filter after finally pulling the stupid aluminum cover off of the top. I placed it at my lips as I stared at the tree, pulling the lighter up to the end. I flicked it and inhaled. I walked forward slowly, keeping my eyes on the tree. A sense of unreality hit me. A feeling like I was in a dream. The bark seemed to swim before my eyes, like a pattern when you've stared at it too long. Finally, within 20 feet of the thing, I looked down. I plucked the cigarette from between my lips and blew out smoke. Phew. I said to myself slowly, feeling my hands begin to shake yet again. There, a few feet from the tree, was an indent in the grass. It was exactly where I remembered the deer to be. And pretty damn close in shape. I lifted the cigarette to my lips again, drawing it. My eyes felt as if they'd bulge right out of my sockets as I stared down at this oval indentation in my backyard grass. I took another puff of my cigarette, then another, then another. I stared at the indentation, and finally, looked up at the tree again. Where'd it go? I said out loud, my voice just scratching above a whisper. The tree didn't answer. Where'd the fucking deer go? I said. I couldn't see my own face, but I could feel my expression. Shock. Pure shock. And fear. And anger. I couldn't tell if I was angry at myself or the tree. I let the cigarette drop from my fingers to the ground, and looked down to stomp it out. As I was staring down, I felt a sharp pinch-like sensation on the back of my neck. I reached back to touch my neck, but of course nothing was there. I looked up at the tree. It was still right where it had been before. I'm going crazy, I said softly. A thought came to me. What if someone dragged it off? I looked down to the indent, and began to scan around it, keeping my hand on the back of my neck. No. Nope. Nothing. The rest of the yard was uniform. Just there. Just right there, where I thought I'd seen a deer this morning. A deer that was now gone. But the tree was still there. The tree that had replaced my other tree. That night, I kept peeking out of the blinds. I kept them down though, and curtains drawn where I could. Even the front of the house. The paranoia was full-blown. I'd even texted my landlady again. "Can you come tomorrow?" She didn't respond. I ate a TV dinner. I didn't feel like cooking. Around 9 p.m., it suddenly got stormy. That hadn't been in the forecast. Sitting there in my living room, trying to drown out my own paranoid thoughts by watching YouTube videos on my TV, I swore I could hear the tree creaking. Creaking like a factory line. Like an old chain holding too much weight, I finally stood up, walking across my living room and into the dining room. Lightning flashed. I took a step back. I swore I'd just seen a shadow across the door window blinds. I felt my heart pumping in my chest. Budump. Budump. I walked slowly across the dining room to the door. Part of me wanted to go grab a butcher knife from the kitchen. But what would I do with that? What would I do with that? Stab the trunk. I reached my shaking hand up, and lifted one of the blinds, taking a peek through the slat. I couldn't see much of anything. Just the grass a little ways outside of the door. My backyard light was off. I reached a hand over and held it under the switch, hesitating for a moment. Come on. It's just a tree. Just a tree. A big plant. That's all. It's not a serial killer. Not a ghost or a ghoul. Not a fucking werewolf, it's a tree. I flicked the light. It illuminated a good patch of grass in my backyard, about 15 feet or so back. Of course this light dimmed out the further up the yard it went. I could only see the bottom of the trunk of the tree. Lit by the light. It was there. It was where it was supposed to be. I looked up, into the darkness where its top half was. I stared there for a minute. When a flash of lightning illuminated it, I screamed, stumbling back away from the back door. I crashed into the cabinets behind me, letting out another scream. I held my hand up. I don't know why I did. The door stayed shut, nothing happened. But something had happened. I'd seen it. I'd seen a face. A monstrous face in the top half of the tree. The flash of the lightning had fed through the leaves. Large oval eyes. A mouth open in a wide gasping maw. Leaves so perfectly placed as to be like pinprick pupils staring down at me. It was twisted but so instantly recognizable. I let myself slide down the cabinets, placing the hand I'd held up on my chest as I stared at the blinds, feeling hot tears run down my face. What the hell was happening to me? What was that in my backyard? Was I just going crazy? Had I really just seen that? My fingers quiver as I type this out. I can hear the wind whooping outside. I swear that I can hear its leaves rustling. I can hear the branches creaking in the wind. Or is it laughter? It sounds so close to my room. It shouldn't sound like that. I'm going to wait until tomorrow and then. I don't know what. I don't know.